All right, so the lesson objective today is that students will multiply rational expressions. So this isn't a lot different than what you've been doing. We're just going to still factor it and simplify it, and basically we're combining what's on top together and we're combining what's on the bottom and crossing out what we can cross out. So it's basically the same as what we've been doing. It's just adding one extra little step. So first of all, we're going to factor. There's nothing I can factor on the top. So I'm going to have a plus 3, and it's going to be times 6. And on the bottom, I've got 2 times. But I can factor the 3a plus 9, right? So what can I take out? What's the GCF for 3a and 9? A 3, right? So I factor out the 3, and I'm left with a plus 3. And so I've put it all together in one fraction just by multiplying, and then factored it. What is the same on the top and the bottom? The a plus 3's. So those can cancel out. Now if I just multiply it, I've got 6 on top and 6 on the bottom, don't I? So what's that equal? It just equals 1. Okay? So it's not that different than what you guys have been doing so far. Yes? I factored the 3a plus 9. I factored the GCF of 3 out, and then so divided both of those by 3. Okay? All right. So why don't you guys give this one a try on your whiteboards. Notice that you guys have a negative down here in your leading term, so just be careful with that. Okay, so what I did is I went ahead and reduced the 5 and the 9. And then on the bottom, I factored out the negative 4. And so the c minus 4's cancel out, and you're just left with negative 9 over 4. Okay? Did you figure out where you went wrong? Okay. All right, let's take a look at another example for your notes. All right, so these are just like what we did back in chapter 7, back in January. But they are rational expressions, so they've showed up again in this chapter. So sometimes it's easier if you put the numbers all out front and then deal with the variables afterwards. So let's see here. I've got an a squared. I've got b cubed and b, so that's b to the 4th. And then c squared. And on the bottom I have just an a, b squared, and c times c is c squared. All right, so first let's look at the numbers. Do you guys see anything I can reduce? If I'm just looking at my numbers up front there. Does 5 go into 15? Yes, it does. 3 times. Does 3 go into 12? 4 times. Or you could have actually just crossed out the 3's too, I guess. All right, so if I multiply across, on top I have 3 times 4, or 12. All right, are there more a's on the top or the bottom? On top by 1. What about our b's? How many more on top? 2. And then our c squareds just cancel out. And so the final answer ends up being 12ab squared. All right. So here's one for you guys to do on your whiteboards. Y to the 4th. Okay, so 2 goes into itself once, and into 4 2 times. So I've got 5 on top, and 3 times 2, or 6 on the bottom. I've got an x to the 4th on top, x squared on the bottom, so that means there's 2 more x's, and they're on top. And then y to the 7th over y cubed gives me y to the 4th, and then the z's just cancel out. All right, let's take a look at another example. Now I'm multiplying a polynomial times a rational expression, but you do this just like if you were doing a whole number times a fraction. You basically just turn it into a fraction by putting it over 1. And then we're going to factor it. And after we factor it, we'll reduce and multiply it. All right, so I need to factor x squared plus 8x plus 15. And then it's going to be times 4 on top. And then we're going to factor the 2x plus 6 also. All right, so x squared plus 8x plus 15. Do I have a volunteer to tell me how to factor that? All right, go ahead. And they are all positive, right? Okay, so we've got x plus 5 times x plus 3, and then times the 4 on top. On the bottom, all I can factor out is a 2. And if I do that, I get x plus 3. So the 1 doesn't really change anything, so. All right, so now I can cancel out the x plus 3's. Is there anything else that will reduce? Right, 2 goes into 4 2 times. So I'm left with 2 times x plus 5. And there's nothing left on the bottom, so I don't need to write it as a fraction anymore. You can leave the answer like that, or if you want to, you can go ahead and distribute. Either one of those would be a correct answer. I usually just leave them factored like that, but if you like to multiply them out, you can. Bless you. Okay, any questions? All right, here's one for your whiteboards. Okay, so you end up with m minus 5 times 3 times m plus 2 on top, and m minus 6 times m plus 2 on the bottom. The m minus 2's can cancel out, and so 3 times m minus 5 is left on top, and m minus 6 is on the bottom. Or if you want to use the distributive property and multiply it out, you can, but again, you don't have to, and I usually don't. So, but I will take the answer either way. Alrighty, so here's one more for you to try on your whiteboards. Okay, so on top you had x minus 3 times x minus 3 times 2x. On the bottom you've got 6 times x minus 3. We can cross out the x minus 3's, but that's not all that you can reduce. You guys see the 2 and the 6? We can also reduce the 2 and the 6. So when you do that, 2 goes into that 3 times and into that once. So finally you're left with x times x minus 3 on top and just a 3 on the bottom. Okay. Okay, and again, if you wanted to, you could multiply it across and have x squared minus 3x over 3, but it's not necessary. Questions? All right, so do you guys see how it's still similar to what we've been doing so far? It's just adding one more step, right? Okay, that concludes the lesson.